This is Ellis Monroe, coming to you live from what used to be the Missouri River Basin. They say the rain stopped 3 years ago, but for us, it ended the day the river ran dry. Weather report for July 16th, 2037. Current temperature, 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity, a cruel joke at 8%. Barometric pressure, steady and unforgiving. Dust storm warning in effect for the eastern quadrants until sundown. Heavy particulate masks required if you're foolish enough to venture outside. That was 3 ounces of my daily ration. Just so you know what it sounds like, folks. The sound of survival. For those just tuning in on this salvaged AM frequency, this broadcast reaches what's left of Missouri, Kansas, and parts of Nebraska. I'm transmitting from the old KCMO radio tower, solar-powered equipment. No government approval because, well, there isn't much government left to approve anything. I was a meteorologist for 22 years. I predicted weather patterns, storm systems, seasonal changes. I read the skies for a living. But I never saw this coming. None of us did. The models showed decreased precipitation, yes. Climate shifts, absolutely. But not silence. Not the clouds refusing to break for 3 years running. Reports coming in from the Western Territories aren't good. The Rocky Mountain snowpack, what little remained, is gone. The watersheds that fed our region have turned to dust. Last night I watched through my telescope as the final reservoir for Kansas City was drained. Not by authorities, by people. Thousands of them, with buckets and bottles and anything that could hold water. I don't blame them. When thirst drives you, morality becomes flexible. Hold on. My instruments are picking up another dust storm forming south of what used to be Topeka. If you're in the southern counties, seek shelter immediately. The particulate density on this one is dangerous. Microsilicates that will tear up your lungs if you breathe them in. Close your windows. Seal your doors. Use wet cloths if you have water to spare, which you don't. So use damp cloths at least. 3 years ago, I was standing on the banks of the Missouri River for my niece's wedding. The river was low then, much lower than it should have been. We all commented on it, made jokes about climate change, how we'd have to learn to drink less water. 12 weeks later, I stood in the same spot, my feet on cracked mud, looking at a riverbed that had flowed continuously for millennia, now exposed to the sun. That's when I knew this wasn't just drought, this was something else entirely. The atmospheric patterns have changed. High-pressure systems have become stationary over the Central Plains. The jet stream has shifted north. Clouds form, but they don't release. It's as if the sky itself is holding its breath. For those keeping record, municipal water has been rationed to 8 ounces per person per day in the remaining distribution centers. Not enough to live on, just enough to not die immediately. The water cartels are charging a week's labor for a gallon. Some people are paying, others are doing other things. I received word yesterday that Mayor Westbrook authorized the execution of 3 looters caught stealing from the emergency reserve. Public hangings in the town square. The refugee camps along what used to be the Iowa border have swelled to over 50,000 people. No sanitation, no proper shelter. Just desperate souls hoping the northern states still have water to share. They don't. The Great Lakes are down 40 feet and falling. Lake Michigan looks like a giant bathtub with the plug pulled out. Mud flats extending for miles where blue water once lapped against Chicago's shoreline. I've had to move my broadcasting equipment 3 times in the past month. The dust gets into everything, clogs the filters, ruins the circuitry. And then there are the raiders. Gangs of dehydrated desperados who'd kill you for the moisture in your breath if they could extract it. Last week, I encountered Marshall Grimes and his water patrol while scavenging for parts. Former county sheriff turned warlord, controlling the last working well in 4 counties. He's got 30 men armed with rifles and a stranglehold on survival. They're running a protection racket, 2 hours of labor for 1 cup of cloudy water. People are taking the deal. What choice do they have? The scientific community, what's left of it, is scattered across hidden research stations. Professor Nakamura was broadcasting from the University of Colorado until last month when her signal went dark. Her last transmission mentioned atmospheric seeding prototypes and moisture reclamation technology. Then nothing. Rumor has it the federal remnant conscripted her and her team, relocated them to some underground facility up north. Can't confirm that. Can't confirm much these days. Children born in the last 3 years have never seen rainfall. Think about that. Never felt water falling from the sky. They call them dust babies, born into a world where clouds are just cruel teases, where bedtime stories include magical tales of something called puddles. They have trouble believing it was ever real. Got a report this morning about the water trains from the Mississippi. They're not coming anymore. The rains in the eastern territories have slowed too. Not as bad as here in the heartland, but enough that they're keeping their reserves. Can't say I blame them. Survival has a way of shrinking one's circle of concern. The Blackwell family farm, largest agricultural operation in 3 counties before all this. They've gone nocturnal, farming by starlight when the temperature drops to a bearable 85 degrees. Their underground cistern system, built by Old Man Blackwell's grandfather during the Dust Bowl, is still yielding just enough for their crops. They're growing moisture-efficient sorghum and drought-resistant maize variants. Keeping the seeds alive, they say, for when things turn around. Commander Reeves from the National Guard's 39th Division broadcasted on emergency channels 2 days ago. His unit is abandoning their post at the Columbia Water Treatment Facility. Said they were under sustained civilian pressure. Military speak for we're being overrun by thirsty people and we don't want to shoot them. They're headed to the Ozark Mountain bunkers. At least the limestone caves there still have groundwater seepage. I've been tracking atmospheric moisture content for 3 years. Every day, plotting it on hand-drawn charts when the computers failed. The trend line only goes one direction. Sometimes I try to calculate exactly how many tears the human population would need to cry to make it rain again. Turns out, not even our collective grief would be enough to fill a cloud. Yesterday I saw a man trade his wedding ring for half a liter of water, a gold band for a few swallows of life. His hands shook as he made the exchange, but his eyes were dry, no tears to waste. The water trader, a gaunt woman with cracked lips and calculating eyes, didn't even bother to look at the ring, just dropped it in a pouch with dozens of others. Jewelry has no value anymore. It can't hydrate your children. The theological debates have started up again on the emergency frequencies. Some preachers calling it divine judgment, others promising deliverance. Reverend Holloway is gathering followers at the dried-up bed of Lake Olathe, promising that faith will bring the waters back. Says they need to dig in the dry lake bed to release the hidden springs. 3 of his followers died from heat stroke yesterday. Faith didn't cool the air or wet their tongues. The internet, what's left of it, is filled with theories. Underground water hoarding conspiracies, cloud manipulation by foreign powers, government weather control experiments gone wrong. 1,000 explanations, none of them changing the simple fact: when you turn on a tap, nothing comes out. I keep a map on my wall marking the locations of the last known functional wells. There were 73 when I started tracking 3 months ago. This morning, I crossed off 2 more, down to 26 now. They're failing faster as the water table continues to drop and the deeper aquifers get tapped. Once they hit bedrock, that's it. There's no magic water waiting beneath the stone. Had a moment of hope last week. Barometric pressure dropped suddenly. Temperature fell 15 degrees in an hour. All the signs of an approaching front. I stood outside, instruments in hand, watching the western horizon. Clouds formed, actual, dark, heavy clouds. My hygrometer showed rising humidity levels. For 3 hours, we all waited. Then the winds shifted, the high-pressure ridge reasserted itself, and the clouds dissipated without releasing a single drop. Hope is exhausting. The old-timers talk about the Dust Bowl days, how their grandparents survived, how the rains eventually returned. But this is different. The Dust Bowl was localized, temporary. This is continental, possibly global. The atmospheric patterns have fundamentally shifted. I've been monitoring radio transmissions from overseas when conditions allow. Europe is facing similar patterns. Australia has become largely uninhabitable outside coastal regions. This isn't a cycle. It's a new reality. I've started collecting oral histories from anyone who remembers swimming in the rivers, boating on the lakes, standing in the rain with their face turned upward, recording their descriptions so we don't forget, so that when the dust babies ask what water falling from the sky felt like, we can tell them with the right words. Cold, heavy, relentless, miraculous. The words of water have become poetry now. For what it's worth, the stars are brighter than they've ever been. No moisture in the air to dim their light. The Milky Way spreads across the night sky like spilled salt on black velvet. Sometimes I sleep outside, watching them, wondering if other worlds out there are covered in water they take for granted. Wondering if they'd share, if they knew. I'll be back at sundown with more reports. If anyone from the Eastern Territories is receiving this, please signal back on frequency 160.2. We need to know if the lakes are still there. We need to know if there's somewhere to go. This is Ellis Monroe, former senior meteorologist for the Midwest Weather Service, now just a voice in what used to be the heartland. Stay alive out there. Stay human if you can. This is Ellis Monroe, broadcasting on emergency frequency 120.7. Day 1124 without significant rainfall. Weather report. Temperature holding at 102 degrees at sunset. Air quality index hazardous. Dust particulate levels at record highs. The remnants of what was once called the breadbasket of America are now airborne, carried by relentless winds. Ironic how the topsoil that once fed nations now chokes our lungs. 2 ounces. That's all I have left until tomorrow's collection. I received a signal today. Weak, distorted, but unmistakably human. Someone out there is listening. Someone from the north responded to my broadcast. They spoke of a scientist, Dr. Vanessa Winters, formerly of NOAA, who's been working on atmospheric manipulation from a makeshift lab in what's left of Minnesota. They're calling her the water bringer. We're creating myths already. Folklore springs up like the weeds that somehow survive in this wasteland. The human mind needs stories when reality becomes unbearable. But here's what I know about Winters' work. Before the drought, she specialized in cloud seeding and atmospheric moisture pathways. Now she's supposedly hacked into abandoned weather satellites, reprogramming them to gather data on viable cloud formations. The theory is solid. Identify potential rain-bearing clouds and seed them with silver iodide or potassium iodide particles to trigger condensation. The problem is scale. You'd need massive distribution systems, aircraft that can reach high altitudes, fuel for those aircraft, all things we no longer have in abundance. Dust storm update. The system has stalled over the remains of Springfield. If you're in that vicinity, stay in shelter. This one's bad. Visibility down to yards, not miles. I've been tracking moisture levels across what used to be our nation. The Great Lakes are at 40% capacity. The Mississippi is now a series of disconnected pools, stagnant and increasingly saline. The Colorado River, well, it was already in trouble before all this. Now it's just a memory. Hydro Day. That's what they're calling it in the settlements. a mythical date when the rain will return. Some say it's a religious calculation based on biblical floods. Others claim it's from winter's scientific modeling. I've heard whispers that it's exactly 38 days from today. People are counting down, preparing vessels to collect water, clearing their rooftops. Hope is a powerful drug, but science tells us something different. Let me explain what's actually happening. We've triggered what climatologists once called a precipitation feedback loop. As regions dry out, they generate less evaporation. Less evaporation means fewer clouds form locally. Fewer clouds mean less rainfall, which leads to more drying. It's a vicious cycle that, once established, is difficult to break. Add to that the collapse of regional weather patterns due to jet stream destabilization, and you have what we're experiencing now, a new climate equilibrium. A dry one. That sound you just heard isn't thunder. It's the collapse of another abandoned structure in the distance, the fifth today. As wood dries out completely, buildings that stood for a century or more simply give up. Just like the people. Reports from the Eastern Water Distribution Center today, a riot broke out when officials announced reduced rations. 3 dead, dozens injured. Water cartels moved in afterward, offering protection and supplies at impossible prices. Came across a band of nomads yesterday, what they're calling water hunters, led by a former hydrologist named Sullivan. They move from place to place with ground-penetrating radar equipment salvaged from old mining operations, looking for underwater springs, forgotten wells, any source of moisture. They told me they found a pocket of water beneath an abandoned shopping mall last week, enough to sustain their group for a month. They move at night, avoid settlements, trust no one. Sullivan's eyes had the hollow look of someone who's seen too much desperation. The Waterbringer's followers are growing in number. Their scouts travel through settlements, whispering about her miracles. They claim she made it rain in a small area near the Canadian border 3 weeks ago. A localized shower that lasted 8 minutes. No photographic evidence exists. Cameras are luxury items now, but they carry small vials of what they claim is that rainfall. Precious relics of a miracle. A military convoy passed my broadcasting station last night. 5 armored vehicles, heavily armed personnel. Not local militia, these were federal remnant forces. Moving north, toward the Waterbringer's rumored location. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. A trader named Alvarez visited yesterday, offering purification tablets in exchange for information. He's been traveling between the remaining settlements, carrying news along with his goods. Says the Southwestern Territories have organized into a water confederation. 7 communities pooling resources, defending the last aquifer that hasn't run dry. They've instituted moisture recycling systems, capturing and purifying human waste, sweat, breath condensation. Nothing wasted. They're surviving, not thriving, but surviving is victory these days. The faith communities are fracturing. Father Donovan's congregation in the old cathedral is preaching acceptance, that the drought is divine will, that we should prepare for the end with dignity. Across town, Sister Valencia has turned the abandoned high school into a temple to the Waterbringer. They perform rainfall dances every sunset, different approaches to the same desperation. I've been monitoring radio transmissions mentioning the Waterbringer, triangulating signals, mapping sightings. If she exists, if she's more than just collective wishful thinking, she's moving. Never staying in one location more than a few days. Smart. Water knowledge makes you both valuable and vulnerable. The satellite imagery I've been able to access shows something strange. Cloud formations that appear briefly over specific locations, then dissipate. Too regular to be natural. Too localized to be coincidence. If Winters has found a way to manipulate atmospheric moisture, even temporarily, it would explain these patterns. It would also explain why powerful people are looking for her. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in the night, coldest it's been in months. My instruments show elevated humidity levels, still desperately low by pre-drought standards, but higher than we've seen. Something's changing in the atmosphere. Too early to tell if it's significant or just another cruel tease. Governor Lassiter made his first public address in 8 months yesterday, broadcast on emergency frequencies. He announced Project Resurgence, a plan to deep drill into the ancient aquifers beneath the plains. Said they've secured drilling equipment from the abandoned oil fields, starting operations next week. No mention of how they'll distribute any water they find. No mention of who they even are anymore. Government is a flexible concept these days. I crossed paths with a group of children being escorted north by a former schoolteacher named Vega. 30 kids under 12, all orphaned or separated from parents during the water riots. They're heading toward the rumors of rain, toward the water bringer. The youngest ones have never seen precipitation. They carry small jars to catch their first raindrops when they find her. Faith or delusion? At this point, the distinction hardly matters. The dust has a different quality today, finer, darker. My filters are clogging faster than usual. Analysis shows high carbon content. Somewhere, something's burning. A forest, a settlement, a field of desiccated crops. The air carries stories we can no longer see directly. A woman named Annika appeared at my door at dawn. Hollow-cheeked, eyes sharp with intelligence and desperation. Claimed to be a former colleague of Winter's. Showed me technical specifications for what she called atmospheric extraction nets. Technology designed to pull moisture directly from the air, even in desert conditions. The science looked sound. She wanted broadcasting time, wanted to send a message to Winters, coordinates for a meeting. I gave her 5 minutes on my frequency, then she disappeared into the dust storm. Another ghost in this wasteland of ghosts. I've been calculating. The average adult exhales about 400 milliliters of water vapor daily. 5 million people in this region before the Exodus. If we could capture all exhalation moisture efficiently, we'd have 2 billion milliliters daily. Sounds impressive until you realize a single acre of cropland needs about 27,000 gallons, over 100 million milliliters per day. We can't breathe our way out of this. The first cases of what they're calling dust lung appeared in the western settlements. Chronic inhalation of particulates causes progressive respiratory failure. No treatment available with current resources. Those affected have weeks, maybe months. Another reason people are gravitating toward the water bringer myth. Desperate for any solution. I received fragmentary data from a weather buoy in the Pacific. A massive low-pressure system is forming over the ocean, largest seen in years. If it moves eastward, if it maintains integrity crossing the mountain ranges, if the jet stream cooperates, too many ifs. But it's the first meteorological hope I've had in months. The old television stations are broadcasting again in some regions. Not news. There's no infrastructure for that anymore. Just the same message, looped endlessly. Conserve, comply, survive. No information on who's sending it or from where. Some believe it's automated, government systems running on backup power long after the humans who programmed them are gone. Last night I picked up a transmission from what sounded like a military aircraft. Partial encryption, but I caught fragments. Target acquired, an Operation Rainmaker, and Winter's protocol. Then silence. The pieces are connecting. The government hasn't given up. They're hunting the water bringer. The stories grow more elaborate by the day. Now they say Winters doesn't just seed clouds, she creates them. That she's developed technology to pull moisture from the stratosphere. That she can make it rain with her mind. Mythology filling the gaps where science fails us. The more desperate we become, the more powerful our myths need to be. I'm going to attempt contact with Winter's research station tonight. If anyone closer to the Minnesota border is receiving this transmission, Try frequency 142.8. That's supposedly where the Waterbringer broadcasts her findings. Is she real? Is Hydro Day real? I don't know. But I'm a scientist at heart, and scientists investigate. Night's falling, and with it, the temperature will drop to the low 70s. If you have collection devices, tonight's dew point might allow for minimal condensation gathering. 1 teaspoon per square meter if we're lucky. This is Ellis Monroe, still watching the skies, still hoping for what science tells me is increasingly impossible. Stay alive out there. Stay vigilant. This is Ellis Monroe, broadcasting from the edge of what we still call civilization. Day 1137 without measurable rainfall. Weather report, temperature 106 degrees, wind from the southwest at 25 miles per hour, gusting to 40. Another dust storm is forming along the Kansas-Colorado border, particulate levels severe. If you're west of Salina, seek underground shelter immediately. 25 days until supposed Hydro Day. The countdown continues in settlements across the region. I've been tracking this phenomenon, watching hope spread like a contagion. Containers set out, rain barrels positioned, even makeshift reservoirs dug into the hard earth. I made contact with Dr. Winters 3 days ago. The transmission was brief, filled with static, but I confirmed she exists. Her team has repurposed the old NEXRAD weather radar systems, connecting them to satellite data to track atmospheric moisture. They're looking for what she calls moisture trains, narrow atmospheric rivers that might still carry water vapor across continental distances. Her theory is that while local evaporation has diminished, oceanic evaporation continues. If we can identify these moisture trains and seed them at precisely the right moment, might be able to force localized precipitation. But here's the scientific reality. Even successful cloud seeding typically increases rainfall by only 5–15%, and that's in clouds already primed to produce rain. We're dealing with almost completely moisture-depleted air masses. Forgive the background noise. My generator is struggling. The solar panels collect dust faster than I can clean them these days. I need to tell you about something I discovered yesterday. Something that changes everything. I've been monitoring groundwater levels using old USGS well data and my own measurements. 3 days ago, I detected something unusual, an aquifer reading from what should be a completely depleted source. At first, I thought it was equipment malfunction, wishful thinking translated into false data. But I've confirmed it now. There's water beneath us, deep water, much deeper than our typical wells. I'm talking about ancient aquifers, potentially untouched for thousands of years. According to my calculations, there's a massive paleo channel, an ancient buried river system, running about 900 feet below what used to be the Missouri River Basin. It may be connected to the deeper parts of the Ogallala Aquifer that haven't been tapped by agricultural pumping. The implications are enormous. If we can access this water, and that's a massive if, we might have a sustainable water source until atmospheric patterns shift again. But here's the problem. Drilling that deep requires equipment we don't have anymore, energy we can't spare, and knowledge that's becoming scarce as the old well drillers and geologists disperse or disappear. Local alert, water cartel movement detected along the old I-70 corridor. They're moving east, convoy of at least 15 vehicles. If you're in their path, go dark and silent. These aren't the desperate kind. These are the organized kind, the dangerous kind. I've marked the likely boundaries of this paleo channel on maps I'm distributing to trusted couriers. If you encounter someone with a blue armband carrying sealed documents, they're part of my network. The information is being shared with Dr. Winters' team as well. There's another phenomenon I need to report. Communities going dark. Not from violence or evacuation, but by choice. They're moving underground into cave systems, abandoned mines, even repurposed storm sewers. These undergrounders are creating subsurface communities where temperature remains constant, humidity can be controlled, and water, what little they have, evaporates more slowly. It's a logical adaptation, perhaps even an evolutionary one. That sound you hear isn't my equipment. It's drilling, west of my location. The water cartels are getting more sophisticated, using old oil drilling equipment to reach deeper aquifers. They're not scientists or conservationists. They're mining water like it's gold. Because it is. Ventured into the remains of Kansas City yesterday. The skyscrapers stand like tombstones over a metropolitan grave. But beneath the surface, life continues. Found an entrance to what locals call the Warren, a network of interconnected basement levels, underground parking garages, and maintenance tunnels that's become home to over 5,000 people. They've sealed it against the dust, created a microclimate where humidity hovers around 30%. Feels like paradise compared to the 8% outside. Their leader is Judge Harlow, former circuit court judge turned subterranean administrator. Rules with pragmatic efficiency. Everyone contributes. Everyone receives water rations. They're drilling slowly, carefully into the deep limestone beneath the city, seeking the aquifer I've been tracking. There may be 2 months from reaching it, if my calculations are correct. Had to relocate my broadcasting equipment again. The dust claimed my primary location, currently transmitting from an abandoned grain silo. Thick concrete walls, partially underground. Temperature stays almost bearable. Intercepted military communications suggest Operation Rainmaker is accelerating. Whatever they want from Dr. Winters, they're getting impatient. Mentions of enforcement protocols and non-negotiable acquisition. The government remnant sees her as a resource to be seized, not a scientist to be supported. Met an undergrounder scout named Takeda yesterday, part of a network that maps subterranean spaces suitable for habitation. Says there's a community forming in the old mining complex near Joplin, over 8 miles of tunnels, some reaching depths of 1,200 feet. They found seepage, tiny quantities of groundwater filtering through limestone. Not enough to thrive, but enough to survive while they dig deeper. Takeda shared their moisture conservation techniques. They've developed clothing that captures sweat and body moisture, routes it to collection pouches. Nothing wasted. Every toilet retrofitted with distillation systems. Every breath captured by condensers in common areas. They're learning to live in a closed system, recycling every molecule of H2O. The more I study the Paleo Channel data, the more convinced I am of its significance. This isn't just an aquifer, it's a massive underground river system, potentially flowing beneath multiple states. Radioisotope testing of samples from my deepest probes suggests water that's been isolated from the surface for at least 20,000 years. Ancient water. Clean water, water from before human industrialization. Geological records from the old university archives suggest this channel formed during the last ice age melt. Billions of gallons trapped in slow-moving subterranean flows. If we can tap it sustainably, it could redefine survival in the drought zone. But sustainability is a luxury concept these days. The water cartels won't think beyond immediate extraction and profit. A settlement near the old Truman Reservoir has developed a new religion. They worship something they call the Deep Mother, their personification of underground water sources. Their prophet, a woman named Lysander, claims to hear the voice of water flowing far below the earth. Their rituals involve drilling, not randomly, but at sites Lysander indicates after her trance states. The strange thing is, they've had success. 3 significant strikes in areas conventional hydrogeology wouldn't have prioritized. Faith and science blurring in this new world. I can't explain Lysander's accuracy. Maybe she's sensitive to subtle geological indicators. Maybe she's just lucky. Or maybe desperation sharpens perception in ways we don't understand yet. The satellite imagery Dr. Winters shared confirms my suspicions about atmospheric patterns. The jet stream has stabilized in a configuration that pushes moisture-bearing air masses north of our region. Canada is seeing increased precipitation while we desiccate. Climate models never predicted this level of stability in the new patterns. We expected oscillation, variance, even as baselines shifted. Instead, we've gotten stillness, stagnation, as if the atmosphere itself has calcified. But her team has identified what might be a weakness in the pattern, a recurring instability that forms approximately every 40 days when solar radiation intensity peaks. The next occurrence coincides almost exactly with the prophesied hydro day. Coincidence? Or has someone else been tracking the same atmospheric data and spreading hope disguised as prophecy? A water cartel called Blue Gold has established control over the Kansas River Valley, led by a former oil executive named Halstead. They've got drilling equipment, armed security, and rumor says they've captured several hydrologists to direct their operations. They're offering water futures, promises of delivery once they tap the deep aquifers. Selling hope by the barrel. Their chief enforcer, a man known only as Thirst, raided 3 small settlements last week. Took everything, not just water, but food, medicine, equipment, left the people with nothing but the dust on their faces. This isn't commerce anymore. It's extinction. I've been tracking radiation levels in the dust. Elevated. Not immediately dangerous, but concerning. The nuclear plants were supposed to have automatic shutdown protocols when the cooling water diminished. Evidently, some failed. The dust is carrying isotopes from at least one compromised reactor somewhere upwind. Another invisible threat in a world already full of them. Made contact with Professor Barrett at the underground research facility beneath what used to be the University of Nebraska. He's been studying the deep aquifer system for decades. Says my data aligns with his models. The Paleo channel is even more extensive than I estimated, potentially connecting to the deeper portions of the High Plains aquifer system. Enough water to restore the region, if managed properly. But Barrett also delivered sobering news. His ground-penetrating radar shows significant drilling activity across the region. Multiple operations, racing to tap the deep water. Once breached, the aquifer will be vulnerable to contamination, uncontrolled flow, potential collapse. We need coordinated access, managed extraction. Instead, we're getting a water rush. The last gold rush of a dying civilization. The undergrounders are expanding their network. Takeda's maps show interconnected communities spanning hundreds of miles, abandoned mines, natural cave systems, repurposed infrastructure. They're creating a parallel society beneath the dust. They call it Down Under, a network of habitats where humidity can be maintained, where greenhouses grow moisture-efficient crops under LED lighting. Their population is growing, not just from new refugees, but from births. The first generation of children being raised entirely underground. They say these children have unusually acute hearing, sensitive skin, evolutionary adaptations happening in real time. Homo subterraneous. The next branch of humanity, shaped by drought. I received a message from Dr. Winters. Coordinates for a secure transmission window. Information too sensitive for open broadcast. I'll make contact tonight, learn what she knows about Hydro Day, whether the science supports the hope. Early results from the deep drilling sites are troubling. The water is there, just as my data predicted, but accessing it is causing geological instability. Reports of microseismic events near the major drilling operations. The water pressure in these ancient systems is tremendous. Pierce the containing rock layers improperly, and you get blowouts, contamination, collapse of overlying strata. Water that took millions of years to accumulate can be lost in days through through human carelessness. Judge Harlow's community has implemented water mourning rituals. When someone dies, their remaining water ration is shared among their family in a ceremony of continuity. Life into life, the molecular essence of a person passing into their loved ones. Beautiful adaptation to scarcity, making meaning from desperation. Spotted a military drone circling my broadcast location yesterday. High altitude, nearly silent. They're listening, mapping, preparing. For what? I'm not certain. But the timing so close to Hydro Day doesn't feel coincidental. A few sensitive instruments I've placed along the Paleochannel route show minute changes in pressure. The deep waters are shifting, responding to the drilling operations. We're poking holes in a system we barely understand, driven by thirst rather than knowledge. The Waterbringer's followers grow more numerous as Hydro Day approaches. They're gathering at key locations, high ground, former reservoirs, dry riverbeds, ready to capture whatever falls from the sky. Faith doesn't require understanding, only belief. But I'm a meteorologist. I need to understand. Tonight I'll speak with Dr. Winters. Learn whether Hydro Day is science or fiction, whether hope is justified or just another cruel mirage in this endless drought. 25 days until Hydro Day. Will it bring rain? Science says no, but science has been surprised before. I've been wrong before, perhaps never so desperately as I hope to be wrong now. This is Ellis Monroe, still broadcasting, still measuring, still believing in data over myth, but perhaps beginning to understand the power of myth as well. Stay alive out there, stay connected. This is Ellis Monroe, broadcasting on emergency frequency 20.7, day 1162 of the drought. Hydro Day has arrived. Weather report, temperature 110 degrees, wind speeds at 35 miles per hour gusting to 60, barometric pressure falling. For the first time in months, we're seeing a significant pressure drop across the region. Currently 29.72 inches of mercury and decreasing. Something is happening in the upper atmosphere. The stationary high-pressure system that's been locked in place for 3 years is shifting. My instruments show destabilization along the western edge. This isn't in line with any pattern we've observed during the drought. I've been in contact with Dr. Winters continuously for the past 48 hours. Her satellite data confirms what my ground instruments are detecting. The jet stream, that ribbon of fast-moving air that helps guide our weather systems, is dipping south again. It's returning to a pattern we haven't seen since before the drought began. I need to be clear, this doesn't guarantee rain. Atmospheric science isn't prophecy, but it is significant. Reports coming in from across the region. People are gathered outdoors despite the heat and dust. Town squares, dried riverbeds, even rooftops, all filled with the hopeful, the desperate, the believers in Hydro Day. They've brought containers, built collection systems, prepared cisterns. Some are praying. Others are simply waiting, faces turned skyward. The Paleochannel I mentioned in my last broadcast, the ancient underground water source, has been confirmed by 3 separate drilling attempts. Early samples show the water is saline, but purifiable. More importantly, it's vast. Preliminary calculations suggest enough water to sustain regional populations for decades, possibly centuries, if properly managed. But today, all eyes are on the sky, not what lies beneath. Urgent update. Cloud formations detected over the western territories. Not the thin, moisture-starved wisps we've grown accustomed to, but actual cumulus development. Satellite imagery shows moisture-rich air moving into the region from the Gulf. The conditions are favorable. I've spent my career following data, trusting science, believing in what instruments tell me rather than what folklore promises. But today I find myself standing in both worlds. I'm stepping outside now, breaking my own safety protocols. The air feels different, heavier. Those of you who remember what humidity feels like, this is it. Like the atmosphere has weight again. I'm positioning my instruments to capture whatever happens next. For the record, for science, for whoever might be listening to these broadcasts after whatever comes next. The cloud formations are visible now on the western horizon. Dark, substantial. Moving this way, the barometric pressure continues to drop, now at 29.65 inches and falling. Classic preconditions for precipitation. Reports coming in from the far western settlements. They're seeing lightning, actual electrical storm activity for the first time in, I can't even remember. That was thunder, not a building collapse, not machinery, not wishful thinking. Thunder. The data is confirming what my senses are telling me. This is a storm system, an actual moisture-bearing storm system moving across the drought zone. If you're listening, prepare now. Secure any loose objects that could become projectiles in high winds. Position your collection vessels. If you have underground shelter, be ready to use it if winds become extreme. After 3 years of drought, the soil can't absorb sudden rainfall efficiently. Flash flooding is possible. The leading edge of the system is here. The temperature is dropping rapidly, down 10 degrees in just minutes. The wind direction has shifted to the northwest. The air smells like rain. Do you hear that? That's rain. Actual rain hitting the roof of my broadcasting station. It's increasing now, not a sprinkle, not a mist, but actual rainfall. Heavy drops, consistent. My notes are getting wet. My weather notes are getting wet from actual precipitation. The storm is directly overhead now. Lightning, thunder, heavy rainfall. Everything our models said was becoming impossible. I don't know if this is a one-time event or the beginning of a pattern shift. I don't know if Hydro Day was scientific prediction, lucky guess, or self-fulfilling prophecy. The data will tell us eventually. For now, all I know is that water is falling from the sky. I'm going outside now, not as a scientist, not as your broadcaster, but simply as a person who hasn't felt rain on my face in 1,162 days. The rain is cold, shocking against skin that's forgotten this sensation. The ground is steaming as water hits the superheated earth. The smell is indescribable, life awakening. Will this solve everything? No. The drought has reshaped our world in ways that won't be undone by a single storm. The water cartels still control vital resources. The Paleo Channel still needs to be properly accessed and managed. Our infrastructure remains damaged or destroyed. But today, water falls from the sky again. For those listening, document this. Measure the rainfall. Collect what you can. Record what happens to the soil, to the plants that have somehow remained dormant rather than dead. We need this data. There are already puddles forming, actual puddles. I haven't seen standing water outside of controlled environments in so long. This is Ellis Monroe, standing in the rain on Hydro Day. The drought isn't over. One storm doesn't end 3 years of atmospheric restructuring. But something has changed, and with change comes possibility. I'll continue broadcasting as long as there's someone to listen, as long as there's something to report, as long as there's weather to predict. Stay alive out there, stay hopeful, and today, just for today, go outside and feel the rain. My instruments show this isn't an isolated event. The atmospheric pattern shift Dr. Winters predicted is happening exactly as her models projected. The storm front extends over 300 miles, moving east at approximately 25 miles per hour. Radar shows precipitation across the entire system. This isn't a teasing sprinkle. This is sustained rainfall. The undergrounders are emerging. Takeda's people are climbing up from their subterranean havens, standing in the downpour with expressions of disbelief. Children who've never seen rain are trying to catch it in their mouths, dancing in mud that's forming beneath their feet. Commander Riviera from the National Guard Remnant has established emergency communication. They're mobilizing to provide assistance in areas where flash flooding might threaten settlements. After 3 years of bone-dry soil, the water isn't absorbing properly. It's running off, gathering in low-lying areas, creating instant rivers where there were only dust channels moments ago. I'm measuring rainfall rates, currently at 0.8 inches per hour, moderate to heavy by historical standards, absolutely apocalyptic by drought-era measurements. At this rate, we'll see more precipitation in the next 3 hours than we've had in the past 3 years combined. Lysander's followers from the Deep Mother Faith community are performing rituals in the rain, thanking both the sky and the deep aquifers, seeing this as confirmation of their belief that all water is connected, that the Paleo Channel and the clouds are part of the same entity. Their theology isn't scientifically sound, but watching them dance in the downpour, it's hard to argue with their joy. The water cartel compounds have gone silent. No radio traffic, no movement. Halstead's Blue Gold operation has locked down completely. They know what this means for their business model. Rain democratizes water, breaks monopolies, reduces dependency. If this continues, their power evaporates like morning dew. Judge Harlow is broadcasting from the Warren. They've suspended deep drilling operations temporarily, focusing instead on collection systems. They've rigged massive catchment tarps across open areas of the city, funneling rainwater into their underground reservoirs. Combining surface and deep water sources might be our most sustainable path forward. I've received fragmentary transmissions from military channels. Operation Rainmaker is being declared a success. They're claiming credit for the storm system, suggesting this is the result of their atmospheric intervention project. But Dr. Winter's data tells a different story. This is a natural pattern shift, accelerated perhaps by her cloud seeding efforts, but not manufactured. The government wants control of the narrative, control of the water, control of hope itself. The air pressure continues to drop, down to 29.45 inches now. This system isn't finished. Secondary storm cells are forming behind the leading edge. We might be looking at 24 to 48 hours of continuous precipitation. The drought breaking not with a whisper, but with a deluge. Professor Barrett reports that the Paleo Channel is responding to the rainfall. Pressure readings in the deep aquifer system are already showing minor increases. The Earth remembers its old patterns. Rain falls, seeps downward, replenishes what lies beneath. It will take years, decades even, for full restoration of the deep waters. But the cycle has begun again. Wildlife is emerging. Species we thought locally extinct, desert-adapted insects, burrowing rodents, even birds appearing as if from nowhere. Life hidden in plain sight, waiting for this moment. Dormant seeds in the soil are already awakening, their cellular machinery responding to moisture with ancient programming. By tomorrow, we'll see green shoots in what has been dust for years. The rain has a strange quality, heavier than I remember, almost oily at first. Atmospheric pollutants, dust particles serving as condensation nuclei, creating droplets dense with the residue of our dried world. But it's clearing now, becoming purer with each passing hour as the air is cleansed. The settlement at New Smithville reports water flowing in what used to be Carter Creek, dry for over 2 years. Not just a trickle, but actual running water. The creek is remembering its course, finding the path of least resistance through the parched landscape. Water has memory. It returns to where it once flowed. Dr. Winters has gone public with her presence. She's broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. This isn't just a random meteorological event, she explains. This is the result of a planetary-scale pattern shift. The high-pressure dome that's dominated our region for 3 years has finally become unstable. Her team's cloud seeding efforts helped trigger the collapse, but the conditions had to be right. Science and timing working in harmony. She's warning people not to assume this means the climate crisis is over. This is a reprieve, not a resolution. We need to use this opportunity to implement sustainable water management systems, combining rainfall collection with careful extraction from the Paleo Channel. We need governance structures that prioritize equitable distribution. We need to remember the lessons of scarcity, even as abundance temporarily returns. The rain has found weaknesses in our deteriorated infrastructure. Reports of collapsed rooftops, undermined foundations, buildings that survived 3 years of drought are failing under the weight of water. The irony isn't lost on me, saved and destroyed by the same salvation. Lightning struck the Blue Gold Cartel's main drilling operation 20 minutes ago. Their hastily established equipment wasn't properly grounded. The resulting fire is visible from my position, a pillar of steam and smoke as water and fire battle for dominance. Halstead's empire literally going up in flames as nature reclaims authority. Water levels in the abandoned quarry east of my position have risen 6 feet in 3 hours. The rapid filling of empty spaces across the landscape is changing weight distributions, triggering microseismic events. The earth adjusting to the return of water. My instruments are detecting tremors, nothing dangerous yet, but a reminder that rapid change brings its own challenges. The military convoys are retreating from their forward positions around Dr. Winter's last known location. Whatever they planned for Operation Rainmaker is being reevaluated now that nature has accomplished what their technology couldn't. I'm intercepting fragments of new orders, asset protection, and resource security, suggesting they're pivoting to control the aftermath rather than the cause. A child born during the drought, one of the so-called dust babies, is outside my broadcasting station. Her mother is holding her up to the rain, letting it fall on her face. The child is laughing, eyes wide with wonder at this impossible thing, water from the sky. Not a myth or a bedtime story, but tangible reality. Her small hands trying to catch what can't be held. The settlements around the dried lake beds are reporting rapidly rising water levels. Areas that should be gradually filling are instead becoming dangerous as runoff channels overflow. The Waterbringer's followers who gathered in these basins need to move to higher ground immediately. The drought landscape is transforming faster than our drought-conditioned minds can process. I'm measuring pH levels in the rainfall. Initially acidic, 5.2 on the scale, but improving as the storm continues. The atmosphere cleaning itself, returning to balance. By tomorrow, plants that drink this water will find it nourishing rather than harmful. Judge Harlow reports that the Warren is experiencing its first flooding in the lower levels. The undergrounders are implementing emergency protocols, moving supplies and vulnerable residents to higher chambers. The irony of flooding in a community formed in response to drought. Perhaps there's a lesson here about the need for adaptability rather than specialization. The first seeds of what will become our new myths are already taking root. I'm hearing tales of people who called the rain, a child's birthday wish, an elder's dying prayer, a communal ritual timed perfectly with atmospheric conditions. Humans need narratives. We're already constructing them around this event, finding meaning in what might be magnificent coincidence or the inevitable return of statistical probability. The military has established a perimeter around the Palmer Reservoir, formerly a dust bowl, now rapidly refilling. They're claiming authority over what they call strategic water resources, old patterns reasserting themselves alongside the weather patterns. power following water as it always has. I've calculated the total water volume falling across the region. If current rates continue for the projected duration of this system, we're looking at approximately 60 billion gallons of water returning to our landscape, enough to sustain all remaining populations for months if properly collected and managed, enough to begin healing the deep wounds in our ecosystem. The communities that established rainwater collection systems in preparation for Hydro Day are reaping the benefits of their faith or foresight. Those who believed, whether in science or prophecy, positioned themselves to capture this bounty. Sometimes preparation matters more than explanation. The storm center is directly overhead now. Barometric pressure at 29.32 inches, lower than anything recorded in this region for over 3 years. Wind has diminished as the system stabilizes. Steady, vertical rainfall rather than wind-driven sheets. Ideal for absorption, for collection, for renewal. It will take multiple storms to truly re-soak the subsoil, to recharge the shallow aquifers. But it's beginning. Dr. Winters is coordinating with the remaining meteorological stations across the continent. This pattern shift isn't isolated to our region. Similar systems are developing along the entire western drought corridor, a continental-scale atmospheric reorganization. She's careful not to promise permanence. Climate systems contain too many variables for certainty, but the data suggests stability in this new configuration. The rain continues to fall, steady, nourishing, almost sentient in its persistence, water returning to where water belongs. This is Ellis Monroe, continuing to broadcast through the storm. The drought hasn't ended today, but perhaps, just perhaps, it has begun to end. Stay alive out there, stay watchful, and remember this feeling, water falling from the sky, life returning to the dust, possibility replacing certainty. Remember, so we never take it for granted again.